1. Introduction. RAWSEP View. The United States government was on track in the Biden administration to reduce the prices for both clean energy heat pumps and clean energy electric cars. Trump tariffs are expected to upset those plans to prevent future air pollution and prevent climate change. The United States government should, instead of certifying wood stoves as safe when they are not safe, go forward with regulations that ban wood stove use and direct government money for use of forest refuse only. For home building and furniture building, for just a few examples of use of forest products for non-burning uses, it is well known from scientific and medical research that wood burning is a substantial source of PM 2.5 emissions, yet the wood burning industry uses the scientifically debunked theory named carbon neutrality of wood burning to argue that wood burning replacing coal burning in industry, and in a trickle-down argument that wood burning should continue for home heating should continue. Presumably because it is called renewable, wood may be renewable in the sense that a tree can be planted in the place of a cut-down burned tree, but it takes centuries or decades for the newly planted tree to attain the stature of the cut-down burned tree. During those centuries or decades, photosynthesis, which converts CO2 to oxygen and so sequesters some carbon, will not take place at the same rate as photosynthesis was performed previously, and wood burning emits both CO2 and PM 2.5, and PM 2.5 is not absorbed by trees, so PM 2.5 is not diminished by planting a tree in the place of a cut-down and burned tree. In fact, a living tree closes its pores against the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning, just as humans hold their breath in the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning. And when a tree closes its pores, the level of photosynthesis that absorbs CO2 pollution goes down. Wood burning emits 90% PM 2.5 particulate matter of 2.5 micrometer size, the perfect size to infiltrate the human lungs, setting off a cascade of human health problems and early deaths. Contrary to many beliefs, wood burning emits 2.8 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel coal burning, and wood burning emits 450 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel natural gas burning. Replacing coal burning with wood burning creates more air pollution in the form of CO2 and PM 2.5 than coal burning. This emission data comes from testing the cleanest burning wood stove in the United Kingdom, the Eco-Design Wood Stove, and International Convention does not count the emissions from wood burning. The emissions from wood burning are erased from all countries around the world when calculating if each country has met its climate goals. This non-counting or erasure of wood burning emissions data from climate goals does not mean wood burning emissions do not exist. RAWSEP View. Purple air. PM 2.5 monitors hanging from the eaves of the house of a near neighbor should be used to measure the level of PM 2.5 in the air hyperlocally in the yards of near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners. If PM 2.5 levels exceed World Health Organization standards of 5 micrograms per cubic meter annually, then that evidence of air pollution from wood burning should lead to the shutdown of that indoor residential wood burning appliance, one appliance at a time if necessary.
Hi, my name is Lily. Andrew gave you the intro to residents against wood smoke emission particulates and their concern for air pollution from indoor residential wood burning. Residents against wood smoke emission particulates, or RAWSEP, would like every near neighbor of an indoor residential wood burner whose wood smoke enters their yards and sickens the near neighbors to have a purple air PM 2.5 monitor hanging from the eaves of their home to measure the level of PM 2.5 entering their yards. That measurement of air pollution should be used as evidence of unnecessary air pollution, and each indoor residential wood burner should be shut down based on that evidence, one indoor residential wood burner at a time if necessary. The presentation by Andrew ended at 2 minutes 5 seconds. The same presentation by Emma starts at 2 minutes 3 seconds before the end of this podcast. So I am Lily, your timekeeper, and you can start the next podcast at 2 minutes 5 seconds in if you would not like to see the presentation by Andrew a second time. This presentation by me, Lily, ends at 5 minutes in. What you will see in the main content of this RAWSEP podcast will be news about air pollution from indoor residential wood burning and how that air pollution is being combated by ordinary people just like you who are unfortunately near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners at this time. There will also be news about unnecessary and highly polluting use of wood as fuel in industrial wood burners and preventable air pollution from wood burning wildfires. There will also be news about air pollution from PM 2.5 from gas-powered cars. There will also be news about airborne diseases which are also preventable with vaccines such as COVID-19 and measles and whooping cough, to name just a few. In 2025, residents against wood smoke emission particulates is also concerned with combating the Trump destruction of government funding for programs which protect human health through the Department of Health and Human Services, and Trump destruction of programs which fund the science and medical research plan to protect human health from preventable illnesses. Protecting human health is a patriotic act, and our defense against enemies is weakened if we are not as healthy as we can be. Heat pump rebates are now offered by the federal government, distributed through the eligible United States, are available in 2025 and are the best, cleanest, and now cheapest alternative to indoor residential wood burning if that burning is actually done to purportedly save money. Wind and solar as sources of the electricity that powers heat pumps and electric cars is also cheaper than burning wood. The adverse health effects that are caused by indoor residential wood burning also come at a cost to near neighbors, both in shortening and ending their lives and in actual hospital, clinic, and funeral costs. Instead of being compensated monetarily, near neighbors should instead be able to achieve immediate relief by stopping indoor residential wood burning in their hyper-localized neighborhoods, which relief readings from purple air PM 2.5 monitors used as evidence of air pollution will help them achieve. Welcome to news about hopeful scientific and medical achievements that will also help us achieve the goal of clean air to breathe.
Episode 57 DHU for May 31, 2025 Weather Climate Livestream in Poland Vote versus Trumpist Fascism June 1, 2025. In episode 57 DHU for 1 in Poland Presidential Hopefuls Battle for Young Voters Who Do Not Like Them Centrist Trzaskowski versus Trump Style Nawrocki 2 Poland Vote versus Trumpist Fascism June 1, 2025 Polls to vote in tightly contested presidential election. The election is a test for the Poland pro-EU government. 3 United States weather and climate 5-day live stream on youtube.com at livestream.live ending June 1, 2025 4 to 8 headlines 9 Wes Moore and Tim Walz go to a fish fry concerning 2028 10-16 states sue Trump over $1.4 billion in science cuts 11 Trump Energy Department cancels $3.7 billion for new technologies to lower emissions 12 world scientists look elsewhere as U.S. lab Stagger under Trump cuts 13 recent Canadian wildfires are record-breaking and will threaten U.S. air quality for days 14 GOP lawmakers serve notice they will not save Trump with a stupid vote. An analyst says RAWSEP View Some have said that what Trump gains from back and forth on tariffs is that he can give advance knowledge to friends about his tariff moves so Trump friends can make gains on stock market ups and downs. These stock market trades are dubbed by some as taco trades. 15 Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. says his Make America Healthy Again Commission report harnesses gold standard science, citing more than 500 studies and other sources to back up its claims. Those citations though are rife with errors from broken links to misstated conclusions. 7 of the cited sources do not appear to exist at all. Main content. 1 in Poland Presidential Hopefuls Battle for Young Voters Who Do Not Like Them. A runoff election on Sunday pits a centrist against a nationalist who represent mainstream parties. The outcome is unclear given that many under 30 prefer candidates on the political fringes, and of those many were supporters of Sławomir Mencen, a far-right Trump-styled candidate in the first round of the presidential election in Warsaw on May 10. RAWSEP View. The editor has interjected the words Trump style in the excerpt below in order to clarify the positions of candidate Nawrocki and Law and Order Party leader Jarosław Kaczynski and departing Polish President Duda and their right-wing Trump-styled Law and Order Party. The party in Poland that most resembles liberal democracy in this election is the centrist Civic Platform Party, to which the Polish presidential candidate Rafał Trzaskowski, currently the liberal mayor of Warsaw and current Polish Prime Minister Tusk, belong. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity and relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization. The New York Times and Reuters. May 31, 2025 A tight presidential election this weekend in Poland hinges heavily on young voters. A restive demographic with a big stake in the direction of the country, but the two candidates facing off in a runoff election on Sunday share a big problem. Young Poles do not much like either of them. That is adding to the unpredictability of an election widely seen as pivotal for the future of the biggest economic and military power in the formerly communist East of European Union. It is also critical to efforts by the Poland centrist Prime Minister Donald Tusk to unravel the legacy of his populist predecessor Duda in a first round of voting on May 18. Voters aged 18 to 29 overwhelmingly supported anti-establishment candidates who failed to make it to the runoff. They mostly shunned the candidates competing on Sunday who represent the two dominant political parties in Poland. Civic Platform led by Majority Leader Tusk, and in contrast Law and Justice, the former governing party led by Trump-styled Minority Leader Jarosław Kaczynski. The runoff pits Rafał Trzaskowski, the liberal mayor of Warsaw who is backed by the Tusk party, against Trump-styled Karol Nawrocki, a nationalist historian and former boxer supported by Law and Justice, coming only 2 weeks after a presidential election in Romania in which voters chose a centrist over a hard-right admirer of Trump. The Poland vote is being closely watched in Europe and the United States as a test of Trump-styled right-wing populism staying power. Both Tusk aged 68 and Kaczynski aged 75 first entered politics more than 40 years ago when Poland was still a Soviet satellite. After Poland joined the European Union in 2004, 15 years after communism collapsed, they emerged as leaders of two hostile camps, one committed to embracing the values and rules of the European Union, the other Infused with Trump-styled nationalism and fealty to the Roman Catholic Church, they have rotated in and out of power, which leaves Polish politics in a repetitive loop. Kaczynski accuses Tusk of being a German agent more interested in serving Berlin and Brussels than ordinary Poles. Tusk has attacked his rival as a populist Trumpist-style reactionary intent on dismantling democracy and withdrawing Poland from the European Union. Trzaskowski won the first round barely ahead of Trump-styled Nawrocki, who finished second. Whether Trzaskowski can prevail on Sunday depends heavily on how young voters who backed the far-right and leftists in the first round cast their ballots. Only 22% of voters under 30, according to exit poll data, cast their ballots in the first round for the two candidates competing on Sunday. Nearly 70% voted instead for far-right candidates and fringe leftists, with more than half of them supporting Sławomir Mencen, a Trump-style libertarian who is hostile to Ukrainian refugees, taxes, and the European Union. The Polish presidency has no say in setting policy, but its veto power over legislation passed by the government allowed the departing president Andrzej Duda, an ally of Kaczynski, to thwart much of the Tusk agenda. Victory for Nawrocki on Sunday would probably mean more trench warfare between the rival camps, hobbling the Tusk ability to govern and clouding his civic platform party prospects in the next parliamentary election in 2027. The turn away from established parties by the young in Poland has exasperated their elders. Stanislaw Bradigant, aged 88, an actor and playwright who experienced both Nazi and Soviet occupations of Poland, last week begged young voters to come to their senses and vote for Trzaskowski in an impassioned opinion essay in a liberal Warsaw newspaper. "I appreciate and admire your rebellion," he said, "but believe me," he added in an appeal to those who voted for Mencen on May 10th, "it is one thing to rebel in a democratic, free country in which you live now, and quite another in the Trump-style country that your idol wants to give you." 2. Poland vote versus Trumpist fascism. June 1, 2025 polls to vote in tightly contested presidential election. The election is a test for the Poland pro-EU government, excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity, and relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization. Warsaw, Reuters, May 30, 2025. Warsaw, Poland. The centrist frontrunner Trzaskowski in the Poland knife-edge presidential election on Sunday says polls know everything about him, contrasting that with a slew of negative media reports about alleged past conduct of Nawrocki. His Trump-styled nationalist opponent, the President of the Republic of Poland, cannot be someone about whom we learn something every day that not only puzzles us but often terrifies us. Rafał Trzaskowski from the ruling Civic Platform coalition told a rally in the southern Polish town of Kaszanów on Tuesday, if Trzaskowski is elected president, the Polish government will be able to continue reforms to bring it into line with European Union norms on issues like judicial independence. If Nawrocki wins, he is likely to use his veto, as the current President Duda has done, to block them, arguing that Poland should take a conservative path inspired by the policies of Trump. The Nawrocki campaign say that presidential candidate, Civic Platform Party member and current Warsaw Mayor Trzaskowski is an out-of-touch metropolitan liberal who does not understand ordinary Poles. They have mocked his fluency in 5 foreign languages, nicknaming him Bizarre, a Polonized transcription of the French word bonjour for Trzaskowski supporters. Meanwhile, the allegations about Nawrocki make him completely unsuitable for the presidency, the highest office in Poland. 3. United States weather and climate. 5-day live stream on YouTube. Comet live stream live ending June 1, 2025. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity, and relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization. Fast Company, May 28, 2025. Impact. How to watch. Scientists are hosting a 100-hour live stream to protest Trump cuts during the weather and climate live stream. Climate scientists and meteorologists will highlight the importance of their work and how the Trump cuts endanger Americans. How to watch. Scientists are hosting a 100-hour live stream to protest Trump cuts. The Trump administration has decimated climate science across the country, from the mass layoffs at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration NOAA to the shuttering of the NASA Goddard Institute for Space Studies GISS. Now scientists are defending their work and its value to the country by speaking directly to Americans through a 100-hour live stream full of presentations, on everything from air quality and extreme heat to weather stations. Beginning Wednesday, May 28 at 1 p.m. ET, the Weather and Climate livestream will span 5 days ending on Sunday, June 1 at 5:30 p.m. ET. It will feature climate scientists and meteorologists who will talk about their work and the impact of research cuts and also take audience questions. The event kicks off with Kate Marvel, a climate scientist who is formerly an associate researcher at GIS. She will be live streaming the last hours of the GIS lab. That 43,000 square foot space near Columbia University has been crucial to climate science but is closing because the Trump administration terminated its lease. The livestream will also include a panel discussion with terminated NOAA employees. In March, the Trump administration laid off more than 1,000 people, and another one with the former directors of the National Weather Service, as well as primetime talks from experts on topics such as floods, drought and hurricanes. Prominent climate scientist Daniel Swain, who often hosts his own virtual office hours on climate news, heat waves and wildfires, will be participating in an Ask Me Anything session open to audience questions on Saturday, May 31 at 9:30 p.m. ET. The 100-hour live stream is available on YouTube at YouTube.com /livestream live. It is billed as a nonpartisan event organized in part by members of the Union of Concerned Scientists. To the participants, it is also an opportunity to try to save weather forecasts in America. The event website includes a link for Americans to contact their representatives and urge them to restore weather and climate funding. The Trump funding cuts. Scientists and everyday Americans are already feeling the cuts from the Trump administration and the Department of Government Efficiency DOGE. The National Weather Service, for example, is flying fewer weather balloons, which hampered the ability of forecasters to get accurate and timely data to the public about recent hailstorms and tornadoes. New field offices are short-staffed and scrambling to have regular coverage. Hurricane season is also approaching and is expected to be above average with 13 to 19 named storms. The Trump cuts would eliminate climate models that provide accurate forecasting, as well as FEMA services that would help Americans recover from climate disasters. The Trump cuts would also close multiple research institutions and labs in all 6 of the NOAA regional climate centers and end $70 million in grants to research universities. That means thousands of scientists will lose their funding, which translates to less storm forecasting, no more climate monitoring for farmers and coastal communities not receiving information on matters such as tides and flood risk for generations. The U.S. government has invested in the science that helps us do so, building one of the greatest meteorology and climate science communities in the world. The Weather and Climate livestream website reads, in recent months this community has been thwarted in our mission of serving the public due to substantial cuts and firings, but it is not too late to stop those cuts. The livestream organizers note already the Trump administration has walked back some cuts in the face of public pressure, including reopening shuttered weather data centers. The 100-hour livestream is a way to help keep this pressure building. The site reads, the Weather and Climate livestream website includes more information on topics, speakers and the schedule for the 100-hour event. For headlines: The New York Times, May 31, 2025. Climate change: a court debates whether a climate lawsuit threatens national security. The New York Times. Climate change: think you do not need flood insurance? Think again. The New York Times. Democrats in 2028. Wes Moore and Tim Walz get South Carolina talking about the 2028 election. The New York Times. Kennedy Jr. how the baby formula brand Bobby got caught in the RFK Jr. backlash. The New York Times. Musk opinion: tech bro had to go. The New York Times. Nature: 250 million honeybees escape after a truck rolls over in Washington state. The New York Times. Science and medicine: Trump budget cuts. World scientists look elsewhere as U.S. labs stagger under Trump cuts. The New York Times. Trump budget cuts opinion: how far can we degrade our hurricane forecasting before people end up dead? The New York Times. Trump budget cuts opinion: really, Secretary Rubio, I'm lying about the kids dying under Trump? The New York Times. Trump budget cuts opinion: why Trump is resilient. The New York Times. Trump budget cuts. Trump administration ends program critical to search for an HIV vaccine. The New York Times. Trump budget cuts. Trump officials unveil budget cuts to aid for health, housing and research. The New York Times. Trump budget cuts. Trump bashing: the Federalist Society asserts autonomy on judge picks. The New York Times. Trump corruption: a friend bought crypto for my newborn baby, do I have to hold on to it? The New York Times. Trump tariffs: Trump pledges to double tariffs on foreign steel and aluminum to 50. The New York Times. Poland. In the Poland presidential election runoff, candidates battle for young voters who do not like them. The New York Times. Human interest. Fake Myron is tricking Strava while trying to make a larger point. The New York Times. Human interest. This Rice Krispies and pistachios recipe is transcendent. The New York Times. 5 headlines. Reuters. May 31, 2025. Poland punch-ups and tobacco pouches. Polish presidential race gets personal. Reuters. 6 headlines. The New York Times. May 30, 2025. Artificial intelligence. Amazon and the New York Times announce an AI licensing deal. The New York Times. Climate change. Smoke from wildfires in Canada wafts into the upper Midwest. The New York Times. Climate change. Trumpist U.S. oil companies are battening down the hatches. The New York Times. Elon Musk juggle drugs and family drama on the Trump campaign trail. The New York Times. Musk opinion. Elon. The Musk legacy is disease, starvation and death. The New York Times. Trump praises Elon Musk in Oval Office news conference. Live updates. The New York Times. Trump praises Elon Musk, who will stay a friend and advisor. Live updates. The New York Times. Science and medicine. Trump budget cuts. 16 states sue Trump over $1.4 billion in National Science Foundation cuts. The New York Times. Science and medicine. Trump budget cuts. Alarmed by Trump cuts. Scientists are talking science for 100 hours. The New York Times. Science and medicine. Trump budget cuts. CDC issues new advice on COVID vaccines for children that contradicted RFK Jr. The New York Times. Science and medicine. Trump budget cuts. Kennedy says healthy children do not need COVID vaccines. Is that true? The New York Times. Science and medicine. Trump budget cuts. Oil companies are sued over death of woman in 2021 heat wave. The New York Times. Science and medicine. Trump budget cuts. Energy Department cancels $3.7 billion for new technologies to lower emissions. The New York Times. Science and medicine. Trump budget cuts. Opinion. The Trump war on nature is up against a powerful new resistance movement. The New York Times. Trump budget cuts. Complaints languished as the Johnson delays hobbled House watchdog. The New York Times. Trump budget cuts. Defending Medicaid cuts. Republican Senator Joni Ernst tells Iowans we all are going to die, after which she was booed. The New York Times. Trump budget cuts. How the Trump regulatory rollbacks are increasing costs on Americans. The New York Times. Trump budget cuts. PBS sues Trump over order to cut funding. The New York Times. Trump budget cuts. Opinion. Silicon Valley is at an inflection point. The New York Times. Trump tariffs. How to find a deal this summer. Amid a weaker dollar and falling airfares. The New York Times. Trump tariffs. Personal consumption expenditures. PCE. Inflation stayed subdued in April amid the Trump tariff limbo. The New York Times. Trump tariffs. Trump pledges to double tariffs on foreign steel to 50%. The New York Times. Trumpist cryptocurrency seems futuristic. The crimes around it are not. The New York Times. Trumpist businessman accused of orchestrating attacks on journalists. The New York Times. Trumpist. Trump administration says New York mascot ban violates civil rights law. The New York Times. Trumpist. Trump says he fired Kim Sajat, National Portrait Gallery director. The New York Times. Trumpist. Trump taps Palantir Technologies to compile data on Americans. The New York Times. Trumpist. Under Trump, a Native American mascot debate is turned upside down. The New York Times. Russia and the United States in Oklahoma role-playing battles borrow from the Russia-Ukraine war. The New York Times. Human interest. How skateboarders helped rebuild the San Francisco UN Plaza. The New York Times. Human interest. Opinion. The police cannot solve every problem. The New York Times. Human interest. Taylor Swift buys her masters from Shamrock Capital, reclaiming the rights to her first 6 albums. The New York Times. 7 headlines. The Guardian. May 30, 2025. Climate change. Recent Canadian wildfires are record-breaking and will threaten U.S. air quality for days. U.S. News. The Guardian. Climate change. Thousands in the province of Manitoba in Canada ordered to evacuate in wildfire emergency. Canada. The Guardian. Elon Musk allegedly took large amounts of drugs including ketamine while advising Trump. Report. Trump administration. The Guardian. Trump praises Elon Musk for colossal change as Doge advisor says farewell Trump. The Guardian. Trump tariffs. Why Trump does not suffer Congress when it comes to his price tariffs. Trump tariffs. The Guardian. 8 headlines. Other. May 30, 2025. Science and medicine. Trump budget cuts make America healthy again. Report cites non-existent studies. Notice Trump budget cuts. GOP lawmakers serve notice they will not save Trump with a stupid vote, says analyst. Raw story. 9. Wes Moore and Tim Walz go to a fish fry concerning 2028 everywhere as the two governors made buzzy appearances in South Carolina. Democrats in the influential state were already looking to the next election and wondering who can win. Subsedited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity and relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization. The New York Times, May 31, 2025. Governor Wes Moore of Maryland played up his family ties to South Carolina and issued a spirited call to action as he addressed a room of Democrats hundreds of miles from home. Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota said he liked the idea of holding the first in the nation presidential primary election in South Carolina and stressed that Democrats should show up in red states like this one. The 2028 presidential campaign is years away and virtually everything about it is uncertain, but in the eyes of some South Carolina Democrats who filed into the state party dinner on Friday night or who headed to the Representative James E. Clyburn annual fish fry nearby, the earliest stages of the primary race are plainly underway. Biden pushed South Carolina to the front of the primary calendar for 2024, angering New Hampshire, which long occupied that spot. Clyburn said he wanted to keep South Carolina in the early primary window but felt less strongly about the precise order in an interview. Walz went further, saying he supported the idea of South Carolina remaining first. "I'm glad we switched it up," he said. "You have to have that diversity of representation. I think South Carolina fits that bill. I like the idea of maybe some of the other earlier states being in a rotation if they can figure that out." 16 states sue Trump over $1.4 billion in science cuts. A group of attorneys general led by Letitia James of New York argues that National Science Foundation programs are critical for leading in science and technology. Subsedited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity and relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization. The New York Times, May 28, 2025. 16 states sued the Trump administration on Wednesday, asking a federal court to block cuts in programs and funding for the National Science Foundation that they argue are critical to maintaining the position as a global leader in science, technology, engineering, and math of the United States. The NSF last month began ending projects that were focused on increasing the participation of women, minorities, and people with disabilities in STEM fields, and this month it said it would cap indirect research costs like laboratory space and equipment at 15% of granted funds. According to the lawsuit, more than 1,700 research grants at the NSF had been cancelled as of Wednesday, according to a list published by the foundation, which amounts to $1.4 billion worth of cuts. Trump attacks on basic science and essential efforts to ensure diversity in STEM will weaken our economy and our national security, said Attorney General Letitia James of New York, who is leading the legal challenge filed in Federal District Court in Manhattan. "Putting politics over science will only set our country back," James said in court papers. The coalition of states said the NSF directive to cap indirect costs at 15% for all NSF research projects awarded to universities would be devastating. The State University of New York, for instance, would lose $18 million. The lawsuit says established in 1950, the NSF funds much of the scientific research in the United States. In fiscal year 2024, the agency had a $9 billion budget. The Trump draft budget published earlier this month proposed slashing those funds by 55.8%. days after the award terminations began. The director of the NSF, Saiturman Pankanathan, announced his resignation. In addition to New York, the other states joining in the lawsuit were California, Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, Hawaii, Illinois, Maryland, Massachusetts, Nevada, New Jersey, New Mexico, Oregon, Rhode Island, Wisconsin, and Washington. 11 Trump Energy Department cancels $3.7 billion for new technologies to lower emissions. The 24 awards would have gone to a range of companies trying novel ways to reduce the pollution that is heating the planet. Subsedited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity and relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization. The New York Times, May 30, 2025. The Energy Department announced on Friday that it was terminating $3.7 billion in Biden-era awards to companies trying to demonstrate technologies that might one day help tackle global warming. Some of the 24 canceled awards would have gone to industrial companies that were aiming to reduce emissions from cement, iron, glass, and chemicals production. Others has been awarded to fossil fuel and cement companies attempting to trap and bury carbon dioxide from their smokestacks before the gas escapes into the atmosphere and heats the planet. Two of the terminated awards, worth $540 million in all would have gone to Calpine, one of the largest producers of electricity in America, which was trying to capture and store the carbon from two large natural gas power plants in Yuba City, California and Baytown, Texas. Also on the chopping block was a $331 million award to the oil giant ExxonMobil, which had been planning to replace natural gas with lower emissions hydrogen at a chemical facility in Baytown, Texas. In announcing the cuts, the Energy Department said in a statement that the projects failed to advance the energy needs of the American people, were not economically viable, and would not generate a positive return on investment of taxpayer dollars. The Biden administration had worked to award most of those funds before President Trump came into office, including $6 billion for technologies to cut industrial emissions. Many of the awards were legally binding, but they often had conditions attached to them, and most of the money has yet to be spent this month. The Energy Department announced that it would scrutinize a separate batch of 179 awards worth $15 billion, including funding to upgrade electric grids and promote domestic battery manufacturing. The agency said it would demand extensive information from awardees and warned that failure to respond adequately could be used as grounds for termination. The agency has not announced the results of that review. The Energy Department still oversees tens of millions of dollars that it has obligated for a wide variety of other energy projects, including helps to produce hydrogen fuels and to pull carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. The Loan Programs Office of the Energy Department has also awarded more than $100 billion in loans and loan guarantees to mining companies, electric vehicle makers and other companies trying to bring nascent technologies to market, but some of that funding has also started to be pulled back. This week the Energy Department cancelled a partial loan guarantee worth $2.92 billion to Sunnova Energy, a residential solar panel installer that was experimenting with a novel way to link home solar and battery systems. In that case, the loan cancellation came after Sunnova said that it did not intend to use the funds for the foreseeable future. The Sunnova business had been running into trouble even before the Trump administration came into office, partly because of high interest rates and reduced state incentives. 12 world scientists look elsewhere as U.S. lab Stagger under Trump cuts with a welcome mat withdrawn for promising researchers from around the world. America is at risk of losing its long-standing preeminence in the sciences, except cited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. The New York Times, May 31, 2025. The political turmoil in Washington has dried up job opportunities in what a professor calls the best research ecosystem in the world. Some decided they would now rather take their skills elsewhere, including Austria, Japan and Australia, while others opted to stay in India. The global supremacy that the United States has long enjoyed in health, biology, the physical sciences and other fields, they warn, may be coming to an end if it becomes impossible to work with non-US scientists. He said it would basically render the kinds of research that I do impossible at Johns Hopkins University. A bastion of scientific research officials announced the layoffs of more than 2,000 people after losing $800 million in government grants. An analysis by the New York Times found that the National Science Foundation, the preeminent funding agency in the physical sciences in the world, has been issuing financing for new grants at its slowest rate since at least 1990. The acceptance of risk and seemingly crazy leaps of inspiration woven into American attitudes, he said, help produce a research environment that nowhere else can quite match. The result has been decades of innovation, economic growth and military advances. Many foreign governments from France to Australia have also started openly courting American scientists. In 1945, a presidential science advisor, Vannevar Bush, issued a landmark blueprint for post-World War II science in the United States. Science, the endless frontier, it was called, and among its arguments was that the country would gain more by sharing information, including bringing in foreign scientists, even if they might one day leave them, by trying to protect discoveries that would be made elsewhere anyway. The blueprint helped drive the post-war scientific dominance of the United States, said an international technology advisor in the Biden White House. It is too early to tell whether Europe, say, or China could take over an international leadership role in science. Austria has become a huge destination for many students. 13 recent Canadian wildfires are record-breaking and will threaten U.S. air quality for days after historic seasons in last 2 years. Blazes continued trend of warm dry conditions intensified by climate crisis cited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity and relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization The Guardian, May 30, 2025. Enormous early season wildfires have erupted across the prairie provinces of Canada this week, taxing local emergency response and threatening a long stretch of dangerous air quality across eastern North America. The largest fires in Canada, the Bird River Fire and the Border Fire, remain completely uncontained in northern Manitoba. In Manitoba alone, wildfires have burned about 200,000 hectares already this year, already about 3 times the recent full-year average for the province. Smoke rises from a wildfire that prompted an evacuation notice in Flin Flon, Manitoba, Canada. Thousands in Manitoba in Canada ordered to evacuate in wildfire emergency. More than 17,000 people are in the process of being airlifted out of wildfire zones by the Canadian military, some of which now have no safe overland roads connecting them to the rest of the country. Wab Kinew, the Manitoba Premier, declared a province-wide state of emergency on Wednesday, and Premier Scott Moe of Saskatchewan declared the same on Thursday. This is the largest evacuation Manitoba will have seen in living memory of most people, Kinew said at a press conference. For the first time, it is not a fire in one region. We have fires in every region. That is a sign of a changing climate that we are going to have to adapt to. First Nations in Saskatchewan have been particularly affected by the fires this week, with some entire communities evacuated and occasionally trapped by road closures due to unsafe conditions. Drone footage circulated by CBC showed towering flames and burned homes and cabins in northern Saskatchewan on Wednesday. Wildfires are also burning in the oil country of Alberta and have disrupted production and forced evacuations there this week. Satellite images captured over the past 2 weeks showed extreme fire behavior, including pyrocumulus clouds that until recent years has been a rare occurrence in northern Canada, especially in the early days of the annual fire season. These clouds signify an especially hot and intense fire and can help transport smoke high into the atmosphere, where it can then travel long distances in advance of the wave of wildfire smoke. The U.S. National Weather Service has issued air quality alerts for parts of Minnesota between Lake Superior and the Canadian border. Weather forecasts show smoke continuing to billow across the border into the United States over the coming days, which could notably worsen air quality further downstream in cities such as Chicago, Detroit and Washington, D.C. Air quality in the worst affected cities across the Midwest and Mid-Atlantic regions could reach the red category, signifying an air quality index exceeding 150 and unhealthy conditions for all groups. The fire seasons of 2023 and 2024 were the worst 2 years in Canadian history. In June 2023, wildfire smoke transported southward from Canada turned skies orange over New York City, briefly making it the most unhealthy of any city in the world. Government forecasters also predict that the fire seasons in the provinces of Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta and British Columbia will all continue to be well above average for the remainder of the spring and summer. The health effects of wildfire smoke is an increasingly urgent area of medical research. A study published this week found for the first time that exposure to the fine soot particles of wildfire smoke can have adverse effects on the heart and lungs for months after the smoke clears. Other recent studies have found that wildfire smoke worsens the risk of stroke, negatively impacts brain function and can even interfere with fertility treatments. The worrying truth emerging from these studies is that there appears to be no safe level of exposure to wildfire smoke, which can be up to 10 times more toxic than the soot and smog of typical urban air pollution. New data suggests that thousands of people now die each year from wildfire smoke in the U.S., creating billions of dollars of additional costs to the economy. Experts recommend wearing a fitted N95 or similar mask if you're exposed to wildfire smoke outdoors, and using a portable air filtration system if you are indoors. 14 GOP lawmakers serve notice they will not save Trump with a stupid vote. An analyst says RAWSEP View Some have said that what Trump gains from back and forth on tariffs is that he can give advance knowledge to friends about his tariff moves, so Trump friends can make gains on stock market ups and downs. These stock market trades are dubbed by some as taco trades. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization, RAWSEP Chaos story and MSNBC May 30, 2025. Despite a court stepping in late Thursday and reviving the Trump campaign of tariffs against U.S. allies, one political strategist predicted it will all fall apart in the long run and Republican lawmakers will not be there to bail the president out. GOP members of Congress will not want to admit to voters they made a stupid vote and will instead leave the president to fend for himself and take the blame for the economic chaos. I think there was a Democratic theory of, well, at some point the market turmoil will just be so bad that either Trump will have to make a U-turn on this Trump always chickens out TACO taco, or someone will have to step in, whether it is the Senate or advisors saying, all right, we cannot keep doing this. On MSNBC, the host Vitaly prompted her guest with a question, but it does feel like the markets are starting to factor in the unpredictability. So is that the end of the Democratic plan there? Congress is not going to step in. Republicans have already said we do not want any part of this. They are not going to step in on tariffs. They have said we do not want to take the votes on this because they know at some point Trump is not going to be on the ballot and those senators are going to have to face voters and say, hey, I took this stupid vote and raised prices on you, and Trump is not going to be there to defend me. Senator Mike Crapo, Republican of Idaho RID, has already said we are not adding this to reconciliation, even though Trump has said this will be billions and billions of dollars. No, we do not want any part of this, he added. So I think all of Congress has said, President, this is on you, and Democrats are happy to let him make this fight. Watch the markets go up and down. The uncertainty is what is killing him. 15 Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. says his Make America Healthy Again Commission report harnesses gold standard science, citing more than 500 studies and other sources to back up its claims. Those citations, though, are rife with errors from broken links to misstated conclusions. 7 of the cited sources do not appear to exist at all, except edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity and relationship to Residents Against Wood Smoke Emission Particulates, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. This story first appeared in Notice of Publication from the nonprofit Nonpartisan All Britain Journalism Institute May 30, 2025. Epidemiologist Catherine Keyes is listed in the MIHA report as the first author of a study on anxiety in adolescents. When Notice reached out to her this week, she was surprised to hear of the citation. She does study mental health and substance use, she said, but she did not write the paper listed. The paper cited is not a real paper that I or my colleagues were involved with, Keyes told Notice via email. We have certainly done research on this topic but did not publish a paper in JAMA Pediatrics on this topic with that co-author group or with that title. It is not clear that anyone wrote the study cited in the MIHA report. The citation refers to a study titled Changes in Mental Health and Substance Abuse Among U.S. Adolescents During the COVID-19 Pandemic, along with a non-functional link to the digital object identifier of the study. While the citation claims that the study appeared in the 12th issue of the 176th edition of the journal JAMA Pediatrics, that issue did not include a study with that title. As the Trump administration cuts research funding for federal health agencies and academic institutions and rejects the scientific consensus on issues like vaccines, the problematic issues with its much heralded MIHA report could indicate lessening concern for scientific accuracy at the highest levels of the federal government. The Department of Health and Human Services did not respond to a request for comment on the citation inconsistencies of the report. The anxiety study was not the only one the report cites that appears to be mysteriously absent from the scientific literature. A section describing the corporate capture of media highlights 2 studies that it says are broadly illustrative of how a rise in direct-to-consumer drug advertisements has led to more prescriptions being written for ADHD medications and antidepressants for kids. The catch? Neither of those studies is anywhere to be found. Here are the 2 citations: Shah MB et al. 2008, Direct-to-Consumer Advertising and the Rise in ADHD Medication Use Among Children, Pediatrics 1225 E1055 to E1060. Finling RL et al. 2009, Direct-to-Consumer Advertising of Psychotropic Medications for Youth, a Growing Concern, Journal of Child and Adolescent Psychopharmacology 195 487 to 492. Those articles do not appear in the table of contents for the journals listed in their citations. A spokesperson for Virginia Commonwealth University, where psychiatric researcher Robert L. Fendling currently teaches, confirmed to Notice that he never authored such an article. The author of the first study does not appear to be a real ADHD researcher at all, at least not one with a Google Scholar profile. Note from the Notice editor: the Department of Health and Human Services has been editing the published document in the 24 hours since Notice broke this story. A copy of the original PDF that includes these fabricated citations and other irregularities is archived here in another section titled American Children Are on Too Much Medicine: Recent and Emerging Crisis. The report claims that 25 to 40% of mild cases of asthma are overprescribed, but searching Google for the exact title of the paper it cites to back up that figure, overprescribing of oral corticosteroids for children with asthma leads to only one result. The MAHA report. The supposed first author, pediatric pulmonologist Harold J. Farber of the corticosteroids study, denied writing it or ever working with the other listed authors. He pointed to similar research he has conducted, but said that even if the MAHA report cited that study correctly, its conclusions are clearly an overgeneralization of the findings.
Cat's corner strategy with Tiger and Leone. Saying the quiet part out loud. Roar. Hi, I am Tiger. Our human asked us to get up from our naps and start Cat's corner strategy with Tiger and Leone. She gave us a list of internet allies, which we will post for her here.
Hi, I am Leone. It is better for your mental fitness to go to these websites than to go to bro sites for advice. Substack letters from an American Heather Cox Richardson. Substack your local epidemiologist. The Midas Touch. The Guardian. The New York Times.
One introduction. RAWSEP View. The United States government was on track in the Biden administration to reduce the prices for both clean energy heat pumps and clean energy electric cars. Trump tariffs are expected to upset those plans to prevent future air pollution and prevent climate change. The United States government should, instead of certifying wood stoves as safe when they are not safe, go forward with regulations that ban wood stove use and direct government money for use of forest refuse only for home building and furniture building. For just a few examples of use of forest products for non-burning uses, it is well known from scientific and medical research that wood burning is a substantial source of PM 2.5 emissions, yet the wood burning industry uses the scientifically debunked theory named carbon neutrality of wood burning to argue that wood burning replacing coal burning in industry, and in a trickle-down argument that wood burning should continue for home heating should continue. Presumably because it is called renewable, wood may be renewable in the sense that a tree can be planted in the place of a cut-down burned tree. But it takes centuries or decades for the newly planted tree to attain the stature of the cut-down burned tree. During those centuries or decades, photosynthesis, which converts CO2 to oxygen, and so sequesters some carbon, will not take place at the same rate as photosynthesis was performed previously, and wood burning emits both CO2 and PM 2.5, and PM 2.5 is not absorbed by trees, so PM 2.5 is not diminished by planting a tree in the place of a cut-down and burned tree. In fact, a living tree closes its pores against the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning, just as humans hold their breath in the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning. And when a tree closes its pores, the level of photosynthesis that absorbs CO2 pollution goes down. Wood burning emits 90% PM 2.5 particulate matter of 2.5 micrometer size, the perfect size to infiltrate the human lung, setting off a cascade of human health problems and early deaths. Contrary to many beliefs, wood burning emits 2.8 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel coal burning, and wood burning emits 450 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel natural gas burning. Replacing coal burning with wood burning creates more air pollution in the form of CO2 and PM 2.5 than coal burning. This emission data comes from testing the cleanest burning wood stove in the United Kingdom. The Eco-Design Wood Stove and International Convention does not count the emissions from wood burning. The emissions from wood burning are erased from all countries around the world when calculating if each country has met its climate goals. This non-counting or erasure of wood burning emissions data from climate goals does not mean wood burning emissions do not exist. RAWSEP View. Purple air. PM 2.5 monitors hanging from the eaves of the house of a near neighbor should be used to measure the level of PM 2.5 in the air hyperlocally in the yards of near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners. If PM 2.5 levels exceed World Health Organization standards of 5 micrograms per cubic meter annually, then that evidence of air pollution from wood burning should lead to the shutdown of that indoor residential wood burning appliance, one appliance at a time if necessary.